Good morning, children. Today we are going to start the first chapter, The Best Christmas Present in the World, written by Michael Morpurgo. Now I'll tell you something about Michael Morpurgo. He is a famous and award-winning English author and poet who is known best for children's novels, including Private Peaceful, War Horse, and the amazing story of Adolphus Tips. He was born in St. Albans, Hertfordshire, on October 5th, 1943. He has written over 120 books. Many of Michael Morpurgo's books have been adapted. Film versions have been made of Friend or Foe, Private Peaceful, and Why the Whales Came, which was also adapted to a stage play. My Friend Walter, Purple Penguins, and Out of the Ashes were also adapted for TV. War Horse, one of the Michael's best-selling novels, has been adapted as a radio broadcast and stage play. Now I will give you the information about the characters. There are 4 main characters: narrator, Jim Macpherson, Connie Macpherson, and Hans Wolf. The story is told from the point of view of the narrator. The second character is Jim Macpherson. He was the leader of his English troop, and before getting into war, he was a school teacher in Dorset, present in the west part of England. He was brave and courageous as he was leading his troop, kind and open-hearted person, as he shared his time and happiness with enemy army. He was also a loving and caring person. This we come to know as he had great love and affection towards his wife, as shown in the letter. Next we have the character Connie Macpherson. She is the wife of Jim Macpherson, and after her husband went to war, she spent her own life in a belief that she will see him again. The last character we have in the story is Hans Wolf. He was the captain of the German troop. He worked in an orchestra in Dusseldorf before the war. So now we are going to start the chapter, The Best Christmas Present in the World. Okay, now before we start the chapter, I would like to put up certain questions. What is the best present you have ever received? Or what would you like your parents should gift you on a specific festivals? Like you celebrate Holi, we celebrate Diwali, we celebrate Christmas. So actually all these festivals represent something. What is that? So that's the question you need to reflect upon. So here, before I start the chapter, the background of the chapter is actually the war zone, where 2 countries are involved. We have the armies of 2 countries. One army is the army of England, and the second army is the army of Germany. So both these countries were there in the war zone, and in between a certain surprising thing happens. So that's what is written in the letter, the main content of the chapter. Now I'll start the chapter. It's on page number 9, children. I'll read paragraph and explain it. You have any doubt, you can post it once the entire explanation of the chapter is over. I spotted it in a junk shop in Bridport. A roll-top desk. The man said it was early 19th century and oak. I'd wanted one, but they were far too expensive. This one was in a bad condition. The roll top in several pieces. One leg clumsily mended. Scorch marks all down one side. It was going for very little money. I thought I could restore it. It would be a risk, a challenge, but I had to have it. I paid the man and brought it back to my workroom at the back of the garage. I began work on it on Christmas Eve. So here, children, I stands for the narrator, as we know. For quite a long time, he desired to buy a roll-top desk, but he was not able to do so as it was very expensive. Finally, one day, he was able to find it in a junk shop in Bridport. And the desk was very old, early 19th century make, and it was made of oak. The junk shopkeeper was selling it at a low price. We know it why. Because the desk was not in a very good condition. And the roll top was also broken into a number of pieces. And it also had many burn marks. It was probably recovered from Mrs. Macpherson's house after it caught fire. Now, in the first paragraph, children, we have this word clumsily. So that means in an awkward and careless way, right? Then we have scorch marks. So scorch marks actually stands for the specific marks which were there on the specific thing which the narrator had went to purchase there. Restore again is what? It's repair. Challenge again is what? A kind of a call for someone to participate in. Then workroom. So workroom is actually a room for working in, specially one equipped for a particular kind of work. Then garage, we all know it's a kind of a building or indoor area for parking. I removed the roll top completely and pulled out the drawers. The weiner had almost everywhere. So children, weiner actually, it stands for a thin layer of plastic or decorative wood on the furniture of cheap wood. It looked like water damage to me. Both fire and water had clearly taken their toll on this desk. So that means because of the water and fire, the desk was totally not in a good condition. The last drawer was stuck fast. I tried all I could to ease it out gently. In the end, I used brute force. So here it means, children, the narrator was trying to open the drawer, but it was stuck as the desk was quite old and he was not successful in that. I struck it sharply with the side of my fist, and the drawer flew open to reveal a shallow space underneath. A secret drawer. There was something there. I reached in and took out a small black tin box. Sellotaped to the top of it was a piece of lined notepad, and written on it, shaky handwriting, Jim's last letter, received January 25, 1915, to be buried with me when the time comes. I knew, as I did, it was wrong of me to open the box, but curiosity got the better of my scruples. It usually does. So here, students, when the narrator was repairing the desk and opening one of his drawers that had got stuck, he comes across a secret drawer. In the secret drawer, the narrator finds a small box. On top of the box, there was a note written and stuck with the help of a sellotape. Jim's last letter, received on 25th January 1915, to be buried with me when the time comes. That means the writer of the letter was Jim, as we all know. And the note, it was written in a shaky handwriting, so which meant it was written by old Mrs. Macpherson and was not written long back. The narrator also knew that morally it was not correct to open the envelope and read out the letter, but still he was very curious to know what was there in the letter. The next paragraph. Inside the box, there was an envelope. The address read, Mrs. Jim Macpherson, 12 Copper Beeches, Bridport, Dorset. I took out the letter and unfolded it. It was written in pencil and dated at the top December 26, 1914. So now the narrator understood that actually the letter was meant for Mrs. Connie Macpherson, and the address was also written. The date was also specific. Dearest Connie, I write to you in a much happier frame of mind because something wonderful has just happened that I must tell you about at once. So here actually the narrator finds out in the letter that Jim, he wanted to share a memorable experience with his wife, Connie Macpherson. We were all standing in our trenches. So we actually stand here for the English soldiers. Yesterday morning, Christmas morning, it was crisp and quiet all about. As beautiful a morning as I've ever seen, as cold and frosty as a Christmas morning should be. So here they are talking about the Christmas Eve, that is 25th December. What happened there between the English army and the army of Germany? I should like to be able to tell you that we began it, but the truth, I'm ashamed to say, is that Fritz began it. That is, actually, German soldiers were the ones who took the initiative as they wished to celebrate Christmas together without any bloodshed on that specific day. First, someone saw a white flag waving from the trenches opposite. Then, they were calling out to us from across no man's land, Happy Christmas, Tommy! Happy Christmas! When we had got over the surprise, some of us shouted back, Same to you, Fritz. So, children, Fritz actually stands for the name of a German soldier, a common name for them. So, actually, the German soldiers were the ones who first took the initiative of celebrating Christmas together. So, here Jim describes that how on the battlefront he experienced something quite unexpected. Jim sees the Fritz waving a white flag and cheerfully crying out, Happy Christmas. So he was quite surprised. Why? Because actually such kind of action was not at all expected from the enemy army. So first he thought maybe it was a trick played by them to fool the English army. But it was nothing of that sort. With the passage of time, he realized that genuinely the German soldiers were interested to celebrate Christmas on that day without any bloodshed. So therefore, he also ordered his soldiers to be in a festive mood. Now, we'll continue. When we had got over the surprise, some of us shouted back, Same to you, Fritz! Same to you! I thought that would be that. We all did, but then suddenly one of them was up there in his grey greatcoat and waving a white flag. "Don't shoot, lads!" someone shouted, and no one did. Then there was another Fritz up on the parapet, and another. "Keep your heads down," I told the men. "It's a trick." But it wasn't. As I explained earlier, first Jim thought that it was a trick played by the German soldiers, but with the passage of time he realized it was not, and they were genuinely interested in celebrating Christmas together. The next paragraph. One of the Germans was waving a bottle above his head. "It is Christmas Day, Tommy. We have schnapps. We have sausage. We meet you, yes?" By this time, there were dozens of them walking towards us, across no man's land, and not a rifle between them. So here actually, children, the German soldiers, they took the initiative and they were walking towards the British soldiers because they were in a festive mood and they wanted to celebrate the Christmas in a meaningful way. Little Private Morris was the first up. "Come on, boys, what are we waiting for?" And then there was no stopping them. I was the officer. I should have stopped them there and then, I suppose. But the truth is that it never even occurred to me I should. All along their line and ours, I could see men walking slowly towards one another, grey coats, khaki coats, meeting in the middle. And I was one of them. I was part of this. In the middle of the war, we were making peace. So after the initial wave of surprise and suspicion was over, Jim realized that the Germans wanted to celebrate Christmas with them, and the idea was responded with an equal thrill by the British soldiers, and soon both the warring camps were sharing their food and drinks with each other. The men from both the sides were walking towards each other with not a rifle between them. It was quite an astonishing sight for Jim, for in the middle of the war, they were making peace. Now we come to next paragraph, children, page 11. "You cannot imagine, dearest Connie, my feelings as I looked into the eyes of the Fritz officer who approached me, hand outstretched. Hans Wolf." So Hans Wolf actually is the name of the German officer who outstretched his hand to meet the British officer, that is Jim. He said, gripping my hand warmly and holding it, "I am from Düsseldorf. I play the cello in the orchestra." So here, children, we come to know that Hans, he used to play cello in an orchestra. Cello is actually a specific musical instrument. "Captain Jim Macpherson," I replied, "and a happy Christmas to you too. I'm a school teacher from Dorset, in the west of England." "Ah, Dorset?" He smiled. "I know this place. I know it very well. We shared my rum ration and his excellent sausage. And we talked. Connie, how we talked. He spoke almost perfect English. But it turned out that he had never set foot in Dorset, never even been to England. He had learned all he knew of England from school and from reading books in English. His favorite writer was Thomas Hardy. His favorite book, Far from the Madding Crowd. So out there in no man's land, we talked of Bathsheba and Gabriel Oak and Sergeant Troy and Dorset. He had a wife and one son, born just 6 months ago. As I looked about me, there were hundreds of khaki and grey everywhere, all over no man's land, smoking, laughing, talking, drinking, and eating. Hans Wolf and I shared what was left of your wonderful Christmas cake, Connie. He thought the marzipan was the best he had ever tasted. I agreed. We agreed about everything, and he was my enemy. There never was a Christmas party like it, Connie. So here we come to know that the German officer, he greeted Jim. His name was Hans Wolf, and soon they both were talking to each other about their life, their hobbies, and had various such other small talks. Hans Wolf told Jim that he was from Dusseldorf and used to play cello in the orchestra. Jim likewise informed him that he was a school teacher from Dorset. Jim figured out that Hans knew a lot about Dorset, though he had never been to that place. Now, we'll read the paragraph. Then someone, I don't know who, brought out a football. Greatcoats were dumped in piles to make goalposts, and the next thing we knew, it was Tommy against Fritz out in the middle of no man's land. Hans Wolf and I looked on and cheered, clapping our hands and stamping our feet to keep out the cold as much as anything. There was a moment when I noticed our breaths mingling in the air between us. He saw it too and smiled. Jim Macpherson, he said after a while, I think this is how we should resolve this war. A football match? No one dies in a football match. No children are orphaned. No wives become widows. So here children after some times, both the camps arranged themselves into teams to play football. It was difficult to imagine that these were war soldiers and enemies playing football. Hans Wolf commented that a game or a sport is a much better way of resolving conflicts than going on a war. Now, see, children, war always results in destruction. Even if one side wins, still it wins at the cost of lives of many innocent soldiers. So, whatever we need, we can resolve it in a peaceful way instead of engaging ourselves in war. Hans Wolf also had the same opinion because he believed that if a football match is there, no one dies in the football match, no children are orphaned, and things can be sorted out in a peaceful way. Jim replied that he preferred cricket to football, but then both agreed that war was hateful for both of them. I would prefer cricket, I told him. Then we Tommies could be sure of winning probably. We laughed at that, and together we watched the game. Sad to say, Connie, Fritz won, 2 goals to 1. But as Hans Wolf generously said, our goal was wider than theirs, so it wasn't quite fair. So in this paragraph we come to know that the match ended and the German soldiers, they won the match. Now we come to next paragraph on page 13. The time came, and all too soon, when the game was finished. The schnapps and the rum and the sausage had long since run out, and we knew it was all over. I wished Hans well and told him I hoped he would see his family again soon, that the fighting would end and we could all go home. So here we come to know, as the match came to an end, the time to go back to their camps and place themselves again as enemies had come. The troops on both the sides were sad to return and wished each other well with a hope that the war would end soon and they would go back to their families. Even after the soldiers returned to their respective camps, they continued to cheer each other with Christmas carols like Silent Night and While Shepherds Watched. I think that is what every soldier wants on both sides, Hans Wolf said. Take care, Jim Macpherson. I shall never forget this moment, nor you. He saluted and walked away from me slowly, unwillingly. Now, children, why do you think here Hans was quite unwilling? Because he also wanted peace between both the armies. He wanted things to be resolved in a peaceful way, but practically it was not possible. But he still cherished the time both the troops they spent together, spent celebrating Christmas in a meaningful way. That night, back in our dugouts, we heard them singing a carol and singing it quite beautifully. It was Still Natched, Silent Night. Our boys gave them a rousing chorus of While Shepherds Watched. We exchanged carols for a while, and then we all fell silent. We had had our time of peace and goodwill, a time I will treasure as long as I live. Dearest Connie, by Christmas time next year, this war will be nothing but a distant and terrible memory. I know from all that happened today how much both armies long for peace. We shall be together again soon. I'm sure of it. So here we come to know that Jim was very happy the memorable time he spent with the soldiers of Germany. I folded the letter again and slipped it carefully back into its envelope. I kept awake all night. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I drove into Bridport, just a few miles away. I asked a boy walking his dog where Cooper Beach was. House number 12 turned out to be nothing but a burned out shell, the roof gaping, the window boarded up. I knocked at the house next door and asked if anyone knew the whereabouts of a Mrs. Macpherson. Oh, yes, said the old man in his slippers. He knew her well. A lovely old lady, he told me. A bit muddle headed, but at her age she was entitled to be, wasn't she? Her house, when it caught fire, she had been in the house when it caught fire. No one really knew how the fire had started, but it could well have been candles. She used candles rather than electricity because she always thought electricity was too expensive. The fireman had got her out just in time. She was in a nursing home now, he told me, Burlington House, on the Dorchester Road, on the other side of town. So here we come to know that the narrator, he finally decides to give the letter to Connie, and when he goes to the house, he realizes that the house caught fire and she was shifted somewhere else. I found Burlington House nursing home easily enough. There were paper chains up in the hallway, and a lighted Christmas tree stood in the corner with a lopsided angle on top. I said I was a friend come to visit Mrs. Macpherson to bring her a Christmas present. I could see through into the dining room where everyone was wearing a paper hat and singing. The matron had a hat on too and seemed happy enough to see me. She even offered me a mince pie. She walked me along the corridor. Mrs. Macpherson is not in with others, she told me. She's rather confused today, so we thought it best if she had a good rest. She has no family, you know. No one visits, so I'm sure she'll be only too pleased to see you. She took me into a conservatory. So here children, actually conservatory is actually a room with a glass roof with wicker chairs and potted plants all around and left me. The old lady was sitting in a wheelchair, her hands folded in her lap. She had silver white hair pinned into a crispy bun. She was gazing out at the garden. "Hello," I said. She turned and looked up at me vacantly. "Happy Christmas, Connie," I went on. "I found this. I think it's yours." As I was speaking, her eyes never left my face. I opened the tin box and gave it to her. That was the moment her eyes lit up with recognition and her face became suffused with a sudden glow of happiness. I explained about the desk, about how I had found it, but I don't think she was listening. For a while she said nothing, but stroked the letter tenderly with her fingertips. So here, children, the narrator was able to find out Coney. He gave the letter to her, but Coney actually was quite aged, 101 years old, and she mistook the narrator to be Jim. So she was very much delighted. Suddenly, she reached out and took my hand. Her eyes were filled with tears. "You told me you would come home by Christmas, dearest," she said. "And here you are, the best Christmas present in the world. Come closer, Jim dear. Sit down." I sat down beside her, and she kissed my cheek. "Read your letter so often every day. I wanted to hear your voice in my head. It always made me feel you were with me, and now you are. Now you are back. You can read it to me yourself. Would you do that for me, Jim dear? I just want to hear your voice again." "I would love that so much. And then perhaps we'll have some tea. I've made you a nice Christmas cake, marzipan around. I know how much you love marzipan." So in the last paragraph, we come to know that she mistook the narrator to be her husband, and she was very happy. She looked at the narrator and she remembered the promise Jim had made years ago of returning home on Christmas and rejoices thinking that finally Jim kept his promise and has come back to her. So she calls his return the best Christmas present in the world. She then asks him to read out the letter to her in his own voice, for she had been missing his voice. So the chapter has ended. Students, I believe the chapter is very clear to you. So to sum up, we can say there are four main characters. We have narrator, Jim McPherson, Connie McPherson, and Hans Wolf. And then we have the narrator who shares his experience when he went to a junk shop, purchased a roll-top desk. It was in a very bad condition. And then the narrator started its repairing on the Christmas Eve. And when he was repairing it, he found a letter in the drawer. He read the letter, and the letter was from Jim McPherson to his wife Connie. After reading the letter, he realized that Jim McPherson was actually the leader of the England army, and he described that England and Germany were engaged in war. But on the Christmas morning, a wonderful thing happened. First, Germans, they wished Christmas to the soldiers of the English army, and then they were very much eager to celebrate Christmas together without any bloodshed. And the English soldiers also responded well. Then the leaders, they shared their ideas and feelings with each other. They celebrated Christmas by eating, laughing, spending a quality time with each other. And after that, they played a football match in which Germans won. And at the night time, both the troops they sang Christmas carols and celebrated peaceful Christmas in a peaceful way. And then, after reading this letter, the author decided to give this letter to Jim's wife. So, what happens? He went to the address which was mentioned in the letter envelope and he realized that the accidental fire was caught in the house and Jim's wife was shifted in a nursing home and she was too aged. And when he went there, she mistook the narrator to be her husband. She was very happy, and finally, she felt that her husband had returned back, and that was the best Christmas present in the world. Now, children, on page number 17, we have working with language under that heading. We have the exercise based on tense. I will read out the question for you. Fill in the blanks using the correct form of the verbs in brackets. So it's a paragraph. Verb forms are given in the brackets. You have to change it accordingly. This question is to be done in your English classwork notebook. Now we turn our page number 18. Question number 3. Underline the verbs and arrange them in 2 columns, past and earlier past. So students, 4 sentences are given. So you have to underline it and arrange them in the columns given. So you can make this column in your notebook and write it there. Then you have 5 phrasal verbs. That's a dictionary verb. Burn out, light up, look on, run out, keep out. So all these phrasal verbs, you have to look for the meaning. Write the meanings in your English classwork notebook and then frame sentences, 1 sentence for each phrasal verb. The question answers and the word meanings of the lesson has already been uploaded in the school website. So I believe all the students would have noted it down. So before you read the chapter, you can refer to these word meanings. So it will help you in effective understanding of the chapter. All the question answers are to be done in 1 notebook. You have to make 1 classwork copy for your English and the entire work is to be done in that. In case you are not able to find any copy, you can do it in A4 size sheets, and after the school reopens, once you get the copies, you can staple it in the specific English copies.